whatever the SDLC method we had learned so far, all right, and we had seen the total number of phases which are present on the complete SDLC, and how each and every phase is, the way we are performing, how it is getting differ from one phase to another phase, right? So even Agile, it works differently. So the phases will still remain the same, but the way those phases are getting performed would be different. That is the first thing. Another thing is, when, at which particular point of time, what phase would be coming, what kind of deliverables that would be there, even that would be different. Earlier we had seen that we were talking about SRS, BRD and all those stuff. Each of these things which we had learned will not be here anymore. Whatever the things we would be talking now would be in the terms of the user stories. All right, how we would be creating the requirement, how each and every requirement would be prioritized, how each and every iteration would be aligned with the requirements is something we would be learning today. So before moving to the requirements, let's see what exactly this Agile is all about. All right. Okay. So we have so many theories related to Agile. Let me tell you, there is the Agile principle. I mean, there are several principles which Agile follows, and because of those principles itself, Agile is hit in the market. All right. And what of those principles are? First, we are concentrating more and more on interactions, not on the processes and not on the tools. So more interaction is required. More and more communication is required. So if you remember our very first day training session which we had, even that was one of the points, that now the number of interaction, the way we are interacting should be more, and the documentation should be less. More interaction, less documentation, less process following and all those stuff. Okay, so that is what the second point is. We believe in working software rather than documentation of it. Okay, some companies still what they do, they work in Agile, they ask you to create a software, everything would be there as it is, but at the very end, when you are moving towards the release, then they would be asking you to create a documentation. For an instance, or the example I would be giving is the presently whatever the product I am working on. So what we did, our project got started in March 2016, all right, and the release is there on February 25th or something. I mean, it's in the at the end of the February is the release, 2017. So what we did, we started our project, we were working on the Agile, we were more, more and more interactions were there, we were creating the user stories, we were communicating each and everything to the complete whole team, all right. And when everything is done, the development is done, and now the testing is going on. So our testing got started from 28th of November. So from 28th of November, as everything is there on the testing phase, so if any queries that is coming to us, then we are addressing it. But as we are very much near to our new release, so what we are doing is, from December till the February mid, we have been given a job of documenting each and everything which we had done in the complete year. So you got the point, right? Now the priority of the documentation is very low. Even though if we are not delivering the documentation by the mid of the February, this would be given to a documentation team for creating the guide. We would be helping them in order to create the guide, but whatever the documentation we are creating, that would be act as a main documentation for the users, but this will not go outside, I mean outside of Oracle. Rather, the document which is created by the documentation team will go outside Oracle. Yeah, end user documents are there. SRS is, see, if you are working in Agile, just forget about SRS. There's nothing called as a SRS. All right. When SRS would be required in Agile, I will let you know. But in Agile world, there's nothing called as SRS. There's nothing called as a BRD at all. If in case someone asks you to create the business requirement documentation, that is something which if the organization is really keen to document anything, you would be creating. Otherwise, like in my project, we have been asked to create a BRD at the very end. See, the product has been developed. It is there for a release. Now, as our work has been done, so our management asks us to create the business requirement documentation. So just think that how less important is there to do the documentation for us. Documentation is required. I'm not saying the documentation is not required, but it's of very less important. No, not at all. No development, no QA, nobody works on the documentation here. Everyone goes in, or everyone goes with the user stories. No, not at all. Documentation is not required for Agile. You have to see, Rashmi, you have to understand documentation. BA doesn't mean the documentation. We have a document writer for it. Okay, so that's the old theory that BA are the one who create all these documentation. They create, but the priority is very low, and that's what the main manifesto of Agile is. We are not working over a comprehensive documentation at all. All right, and this, when you are saying that the parallelly QA, dev, and documentation go off, no, that's not documentation. That's creating of a user stories, and user story is far different than the documentation. It's more technical, and it's more, it's more related to what exactly you are supposed to do in the next iteration. It's more related to that rather than creating a history of a documentation. Okay, now customer collaboration over contract negotiation. That means we are including customer in each and every activity of Agile. They are into the system. When we are doing something, when we are creating a user story, when the development is going on, when the testing is going on, and when we are demoing it. So at the end of each and every iteration, we are demoing it to the client. Now, one more point. We have something called as stand-up, which I would be explaining. Even sometimes that is open for a user, end user can come, they can attend it, they can, if they want to see what the progress is, definitely they would be given a demo that what exactly the progress of it is. Another thing is responding to a change. So there is no more change request. Again, the change request documentation which we used to do in the waterfall model will not be required here. If something has been missed out, if there's some problem in the requirement, we need to address it as soon as possible. Okay, so the Agile works in these four principles. Now, when we are studying Agile, we have to keep all these things there in our mind.